everyone, I'm Nikki Haverstock and this is the author to portion of my YouTube channel. I'm probably wearing the same shirt I wore last time. I swear I wash it in between. Today's topic is like tricks to help you get into your next scene, your next sprint, your next whatever. So it's not I'm not really talking about writer's block. It's more of like how if you find that every time you sit down, it's this big inertia. It's hard to get your brain moving and you think, oh, maybe there's a better way I can get into my writing faster. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. Those of us who try to treat it like a job, which is a whole other discussion, you might just feel like I'm wasting so much time getting into my writing. A related video is if you look at my channel, I have a video on how to write faster for slower authors, or thinking authors as I like to prefer to call myself. That's also going to be a great resource. So the first thing is you sit down, you're ready to write in the sense that it's quiet, you have your book, you have your time, you have all that, but your brain is like, start off with, if you feel like you can't write, try journaling about what you're going to write. I've done this several times. This is very similar to author pages if you've ever read The Artist's Way, but sometimes I just write about the book. Okay, so today in my, my journal might be like, okay, so today I want to write about the big, climactic finish, and I know that there needs to be really big, and I'm kind of stressed about the fact that, blah, 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 and then, she comes into the room, and what I found is a lot of times while I'm journaling, I actually all of a sudden go, wait, and I just open up the file and I just keep writing, and it's like my warm-up exercise. So you can try journaling about your writing and then seeing if all of a sudden you go, oh, I'm ready to write. Depending on your particular personality mood, you may need to talk about your writing. There's this stereotype that all writers are introverts and we don't know how to speak and we can only communicate through our fingers. Not everyone is like that. I'm not. I am. There are things that I do that are very typical extroverted and introverted. So I definitely need time to recharge, but I function really well through communication. And sometimes that can be writing to my friends on a Slack channel. Sometimes I need to go down and be like, hey, John, can I talk to you a minute? I'm just really stuck with this book. And I talk to my husband about it. And a lot of times I can't even really articulate why I can't do a scene until I've tried to explain to someone else. And then all of a sudden I go, okay, the real problem is I don't know where this scene starts. So I'm going to talk about some questions you can ask yourself to see if the problem is not your attitude, but actually the fact that you don't know enough about the scene to start. Another option is make sure that you're not. My friend Becca Syme, who has a channel here on YouTube, who's amazing and smart and she has the write better dash faster. So becoming a better writer faster, not a faster writer, but just becoming your ideal writer, getting through that process faster. She talks about essential pain and the idea that writing is hard. It's a job. It's not always fun. It's like beginning your jog. Unless you're someone who's just crazy about jogging, you know that like the first couple of minutes of jogging are just, oh, so painful. Then it starts to get better. Writing's the same way. And so sometimes you just need to push through the grind. I just call it the grind. I push through the grind. It's awful. It's terrible. It might take you, okay, I'm going to skip around. I'm going to start with this one, which is sometimes just accepting that it's going to suck. Yeah, I mean, maybe you're trying to wait until you feel ready to write. A lot of times I just need to sit down and be like, oh, these first 100 words are going to be terrible. My first sprint tends to be, if you're not familiar with sprints, that's where you like set a timer and you say, okay, I'm gonna maybe even physically lock yourself off of social media and Google and Wikipedia and YouTube and all that. And my first sprint is always my worst in terms of like, oh, sometimes, so it could be just accepting that the initial bit is gonna suck and that's not bad, that's not wrong. Another thing is that you might need to physically move. Some people, if you're familiar with strength training activators, if you're not familiar with strength training, look it up. No, but some people have activators, which means that their brain physically needs movement. There's no amount of sitting at a computer that's going to get their brain going the way it is. So one of the things I like to do that's an option to try is to ask yourself a question like, how does this scene start? If you're like me and you write linearly, there you go. And then I go do some physical activity that's distraction free. And sometimes I can get away with like, some people can do like a coloring book or something, just something to occupy their hands. Sometimes you need physical action. David Baldacci talked about that he showers. He says during a deadline, he is the cleanest person you know. Agatha Christie talked about the best place to write a book is behind, in front of a sink of dishes. It can be vacuuming. It can be, we have horses here, and I think it's one of the best things for me is I'll go and I'll take care of the horses, and I can, do all those kind of chores. But the important thing is, one is your brain needs to be bored during the activity. So no podcasts, no this. Some people can use video games. I would say be really careful with that, because you can definitely convince yourself that, oh, I'm going to go to the Barrens and I'm just going to grind it out. Next thing you know, you're reading quests and you're talking to people and you're trying to plan which alchemy potions you're going to use. So be very careful with video games as dead time. I would really say that it should be a physical activity that is boring. So like vacuuming or something. And use that time to maybe get your brain going to the point where you go, oh, I'd much rather sit down at the computer and write and grind this out than continuing to vacuum. Okay, so those are a lot of suggestions about how to kind of jumpstart this. Ways, I'm going to kind of go, that is when you have that set time. Another option is evaluating the time. So a lot of people will say, if you are a serious writer, a real writer, you will get up an hour early. And I've always pushed back on this advice. I actually am a morning person, but what I've discovered is that I can't write first thing in the morning. I actually need to write kind of in the afternoon. I need time to sink into my work. I need time to think about it. I can do it at the end of a book or at the beginning of the book, but in the middle when this is when I'm like actively still building up the story, is the middle. Because of how I work, I need time. And so I actually have to write in the early afternoon. But I am all morning, I am preparing. I am mentally preparing. And actually I start the day after, which is when I end the day, I usually end at the end of a scene, which some people do not recommend. It depends on what kind of writer you are. But for me, I need to finish the scene, clean it off of my brain, set up the new scene, and it's like defrosting, doing food prep or something. I need time to prep that scene, and so I need time to picture it, to blah, 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 blah. Last night at 2 a.m. I woke up preparing for today's scene. So one thing you could consider is, are you trying to write at the wrong time? Some people, that means they get up early, they have a fresh brain, they have their best time of the day, they're able to go ahead and do it. Some people, it means their afternoon, but they have to start in the morning preparing about, mentally thinking about what they're going to be writing, so that when they hit their actual computer, they put all this prep work in. I also push back on the get up an hour early, because for a lot of people, especially people who have families and kids and dogs and stuff, that if I get up out of bed an hour early, I have woken up my baby, I've woken up all my dogs, I've woken up my whole household. And I think a lot of parents of younger kids can relate to that, where there is no, whatever hour you get up is the hour that the house starts, and so you just can't push it forward. So another thing to consider is ending your writing session with a specific question for your brain to think on. And this is all going to be dependent. You're going to meet authors. I know a lot of authors who say never finish a scene, leave a scene in the middle so that when you come back to the paper, you have an easy starting place. That works great for them. And I would say that if that works for you, then do that. If you have found that you get to the end of that scene and then you have nothing to go next, then do my thing, which is always finish the scene and then end the day with this is my next scene, let me think on it, so that I come back to the page tomorrow prepared. Okay, so one other thing to consider, I know this is a lot of information coming at you in a kind of haphazard manner, but another thing to consider is things like, are you trying to write, is the scene you're trying to write the right scene? And there's a whole series of questions you can ask. Does another scene need to happen before this? Do I know who is in this scene? Do I know what is happening in this scene? Do I know how this scene starts? That's usually the tough one for me. I know what's going to happen in the meat of the scene, but I go, okay, do they start when they arrive at the casino? Are they already at the stage? Do I start with her thinking about what happened an hour earlier? Do I start an hour earlier? Do I you know, things like that. So do you really understand what this scene is? And that tends to be a lot of what I have to think about from the end of one writing session to the beginning of the next, is that I'm really thinking about what information needs to happen here. I write mysteries, so there's a lot of what I'm thinking about are clues, 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 action, clues, clues, action, clues. And so I've got to figure out where and what and all that. So that is a lot of stuff. This is, I think for a lot of writers, I won't say most, for a lot of writers, this is our day-to-day struggle, is getting into the writing session each day. I do not write out of order, so there could probably be a whole video on deciding which scene to write, but I always write in order, so I always have a pretty good idea of what my next scene is. So tell me what tricks you have to start off your writing session successfully. And I hope that you have one of those successful writing sessions today. Okay, bye.